So good morning. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Tahoe-Truckee Sunday morning celebration service. I'm Rev Pam Brandman, the senior minister here at the center, and it's my joy to welcome you here, whoever you are and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. You are welcome here. Our center's purpose is love, and our vision is embracing all and serving with love while awakening to the one. We set our intentions for today with our receptivity statement that you'll see on the screen, if you would read along with me. Everyone muted. I am here by divine appointment. Something I am about to hear applies to my life. I am open, receptive, and willing to explore the possibilities. So as we come together today, we know that there is one power, one presence that is the light of the world. And we call that spirit into the midst of this virtual room as the ultimate facilitator, as the ultimate participator, because we are all one. And so it is God, guiding God, loving God through this workshop, through this morning, through our experiences. What needs to come forward will come forward in our conscious awareness that there is safety, security, and growth that is divinely guided. I am grateful that we are all here today and that it is a perfect, wonderful day unfolding. And together we say, and so it is. So in our workshop today, we'll be following the March CSL theme, which is cultivating authenticity. And I think someone's not muted. So, and our workshop is called Dropping Our Masks, Discovering Wholeness. And we often cover up our authentic self with masks that hide who we really are. But we want to remove our masks and let that authentic self out. It's often scary and it's challenging because it can trigger our vulnerability, right? And so in this workshop, we're going to look at what masks we use and practice being courageous enough to be vulnerable and to remove our masks and reveal our authentic self. Our authentic self, our true self, is like a golden treasure that's hidden within us. And the golden essence, it's pure and magnificent because it's divine, right? And in Science of Mind, we would say that our authentic self is perfect, whole, and complete because we are an individualized expression of that one infinite life, that one infinite invisible, that is the life force within each and every person. And we have covered our golden essence with a mask or a hard shell of plaster. This is the face we show to the world rather than our authentic self many times. Now there's a story of the golden Buddha that is in Bangkok, Thailand. And it's a golden statue of the Buddha that was originally built in the 13th or the 14th century. It stands 9 foot 8 inches tall, weighs 5.5 tons, and it's made of 83% solid gold. It's not just gold plate like a lot of the Buddhas, but solid gold. And in 2023, the value of it is approximately $334 million, just the gold. Right? Now, in 1757, the Burmese army was invading Thailand, and the Buddhist monks at the monastery wanted to protect the Buddha, so they covered the golden Buddha with a thick plastered layer, and they painted it and inlaid it with lots of little pieces of glass, just glass, to hide its value to the invading army. Well, during the invasion, none of the monks survived, but the golden Buddha was left undiscovered. In fact, undiscovered for 200 years. So almost 200 years later, in 1955, an entire monastery in Thailand was being relocated by a group of monks. And while they were moving this large statue, just looked like a plaster statue to them, the ropes broke and it fell to the ground and created a large crack in the plaster. So on closer investigation, trying to figure out what to do about how are we going to move it and so on and so forth. One of the monks noticed that there was this little gleam of gold coming out through the plaster. And so they looked more closely and got out a hammer and chisel and began to chip away at that plaster exterior until solid gold was revealed. So they recorded the whole process, and pieces of that plaster are still on display in the monastery where it was relocated. And they actually built a special monastery just for this. So for us, the saying that they have there in Thailand is, under the plaster of thought and beliefs that are not the truth of who we are, there lies ourself, our own golden Buddha, right? That's who we truly are. And so the answers are within you. What you are seeking is within you. Your authentic self knows who you are, hidden beneath the mask that we portray to the world. So the purpose of this workshop is to bring your awareness of your authentic self to your surface and to share yourself with someone else in a sacred and safe place, right? And when we practice sharing our true self, we give it an opportunity to come alive in the manifest world, to become real. You know, it goes from being a potential to being manifest in the world. It's just like in our center, we would like to go from being the greatest hidden secret to being out there in the world and being manifest. All right. We want to uncover the golden Buddha that we have of this wonderful science of mind teaching. So we're going to start, we're going to go into dyads, but I'd like to do a meditation first to prepare you. So let's close our eyes, get comfortable, have your pen and paper ready. And so as we go within, we follow that place to our heart of hearts where God dwells. And as we do, there is a feeling of comfort, of being home, of being one with spirit, one with our authentic self, one with all of life, being full of life and sharing it with the world. As we are here within, I want you to think of 3 things in your life that you're grateful for. Big or small, it doesn't matter. Just 3 things that come to mind of things that you are grateful for. And write them down on your sheet of paper. And so as we are here, allow yourself to go deeper within yourself, letting go of the outside world, and come to that place where you are with your authentic self. And be in gratitude for who you are, this wonderful golden Buddha within you. And so allow to come to your conscious awareness 3 things about yourself that you are grateful for. And write down those 3 things about yourself. Let's talk about the masks now. And if everyone would mute themselves so we have a good recording. So masks have long been a part of our culture. And the and so the you know, people wear masks to impersonate characters in a play, and the word persona, it's Latin, and it means a character in a play or a book but the word in Latin means mask, right? So that's where the characters come from. And now people also wore masks that representing scary creatures that would frighten off even scarier demons that people were afraid of with those masks. And you can some of the tribal cultures had dancing and things, or still do. And my dad liked to collect African wooden carved masks, and he had a wall in the guest room that had all of these masks all over it. And they had really scary faces, right? And so my son, when we would go to visit, and he was assigned to go sleep in this guest room, he refused to sleep in the guest room. And the only way that he would stay there is that we took all the masks off the wall, and and then he would go in the room. But it was just too scary because there was this kind of spirit thing that went with the mask, right? And so we also wear masks for fun during the holidays or at parties. And on Halloween night, the streets are just full of children with an amazing array, at least they used to be, an amazing array of beautiful, colorful, funny, inventive costumes, spooky costumes, and they have masks or painted faces. So they transfer themselves from children to their fantasies. Right? And during the COVID pandemic, we all became accustomed to seeing surgical masks on everybody's face. And there were a lot of people that I met with a mask on. And when I saw them after after people stopped wearing the mask, I had no idea who they are. Just totally blank it out, right? Because we get so many cues from people's faces. Now, there are other masks, though, that we wear that disguise our true identity, our beliefs, our dreams, our feelings, and we wear them to fit in. We want to look like everyone else. We want to protect ourselves from sticking out, because if we do, we might be rejected. We might become the object of scorn and humiliation, right? Perhaps we don't want our heart broken. If we would dare to share our true self with a potential beloved, right? Or just with the world. Our that treasured self that we cherish, we don't want it to be broken or hurt. Now, unfortunately, the flip side of wearing a mask is that if we don't share our authentic self with the world never gets to experience that part of itself. We're all part of the infinite, invisible, and each part of it is an important part of it. All right. So Brene Brown describes our authentic self as the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. So anyway, so we've got there's a story in the Bible about the bushel basket. And Jesus likened hiding behind a mask to lighting a candle and putting it under a basket. And there's a quote from the Gnostic Bible in the Gospel of Thomas. Thomas was the brother of Jesus. Some people say a twin brother, but and he says, "For no one lights a lamp to set it under a bushel or to put it in a hidden place, but he sets it on the lampstand that all who go in and come out may see its light." Right? This was a quote of Jesus, or Yeshua, as it is in the Gnostic Bible. Now, this story also appears later in the New Testament Bible book of Matthew that was based on the book of Thomas. And in Matthew 5:16, Jesus admonished his followers, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." All right? So Jesus is telling us to have that authentic self and let it shine to the world. Let your light shine. So what would happen if we drop our masks and let our light be seen? It's only by dropping our masks that we can reveal our true self, our authentic self, and share our light with the world. Now, how could our individual self be anything other than a glorious expression of love, of wholeness and light, since we are made of God's stuff, right? That is who we are. E.E. Cummings noted that the greatest battle we face as human beings is the battle to protect our true selves from the self the world wants us to become. So what I'd like to do is let's talk a little bit about what happens when we share our drop our masks and share our authentic self with the world. What happens when we hide our authentic self behind a mask? If we're not out there in the world, what's going to be happening, right? So I'm gonna share my screen. Yeah. Okay, can everybody see that? So what are some of the things that happen when we hide our authentic self behind a mask? Anyone?
Well, quite simply, from what the quotes you quoted before, you are hiding your gifts and your light to the world to benefit the world and mankind, people kind.
Okay. Another one is we're just simply taking a risk. Or avoiding taking a risk, right?
People don't really know who you are.
People might be afraid of interacting with you.
Possibly a duality is created.
That's a good one. What's seen and what's not seen.
I think you can feel the insincerity.
I think it takes work to continue to hide ourselves.
It's exhausting.
Yes.
That's just based on fear.
Mm. What happened?
You're not being true to yourself.
That's a really good one.
So we're becoming part of the illusion instead of exposing the illusions.
It's a vicious cycle. Mhm. What happens to all of those unexpressed ideas and opinions and that you have inside of you?
Creates frustration.
What, Penny?
Creates frustration.
Right.
Could even create depression.
It could even create loneliness.
Good one.
And ultimately illness.
Mhm.
The when that builds up, that can even create rage.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. Screen sharing. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to stop my share, but it did. Okay. There we go. Okay. We've got, let's see. How about grief? Creates grief for what we're missing. Have any of you seen the Talking Women movie? It's women talking, but these are women that their whole persona has been suppressed in this culture, in this colony that they're living in, and they're just there as objects, and they don't have a say of anything. The men run the culture, and so it's an interesting conversation about how they evolve their thinking during the course of their long conversation of the women with themselves, and you know, of standing up for who they really are and what they really believe. So, in some ways, it's like they were sacrificing who they were for the sake of other people. Right? And another one is addictions. You want to numb those feelings. Right? Or avoid them. So when we, all of these things happen when we hide ourselves, right? And so we also have to realize, though, it's not, yes, we are not fulfilling our dreams, right? But also we created those masks to protect ourselves for some reason or another, right? The side effects may be worse than the protection, but that was our intention initially, was to protect ourselves. And so, so part of being able to release them is to feel safe when we're doing it, being in a safe place, and that the pain of staying behind the mask becomes worse than the pain and the fear, the scariness of coming out from behind it and being out there in the world, right? Kind of a scary thing. So Debbie Ford wrote a book called The Dark Side of the Light Chaser. She does a lot of work with shadow work. And this is a quote from her book that's really good. She says, "Your outer shell is the you who faces the world. It hides the characteristics that make up your shadow. Our shadows are so well disguised that we often show the world one face, when in fact, the exact opposite is really within us. Some people wear a layer of toughness that hides their insecurity, their insensitivity, or a mask of humor to cover up their sadness. People who know it all are usually covering up feelings of stupidity, while those who act arrogantly have yet to reveal their insecurity. The cool people are hiding the geek within, and the smiling face, an angry one. We have to look beyond our social masks in order to discover our authentic selves. We are masters of disguise, fooling ourselves, but also fooling others. It is the lies we tell ourselves that we need to decipher. When we are not completely satisfied, happy, healthy, or fulfilling our dreams, we know these lies are in our way. And this is how we recognize our shadow at work. So so when the shadow is there, so part of the teaching of the shadow is that all of the things that we like and don't like about the world or other people or what have you, because we're all one, it's all a part of us, right? So we have tendencies to do things that we don't like, but they're a part of us. And so when we realize that we have that capacity to do that, then it allows us to have more compassion and understanding for other people, for what they're going through, right? And to love and accept them as they are and love them from that point of oneness. It's kind of like, when you're a parent and your 2-year-old is acting out, they don't really understand what they're doing, and loving them is more, you needed discipline is one thing, but it needs to be done with love, right? And so it's the same thing for all people, and it's the same thing for ourselves, so we have to love ourselves with compassion. I mean, a lot of times we put these masks on and we say, okay, I need to be perfect, and if I'm perfect, then the world will love and accept me as I am, and so we try really hard to be perfect. Well, that's, none of us are really perfect, and so we create this stress on ourselves trying to be something that we're not, rather than being who we are and allowing that to express itself, to flow, and to be our part of the world. It's a give and take, that we need all of these different things. And so when we come out of our shell, we're vulnerable, because we're not going to be perfect. We're going to be doing things in a different way. And so Brene Brown defines the uncertainty, vulnerability, as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, right? So a vulnerability then is necessary if we're going to feel hopeful, because if being real is something that we value, and if we want to have warm, down to earth, honest people in our lives and aspire to be like them, right? So we're attracted to people that are vulnerable. We know that people are putting on a mask at one level and when they're not. And so we want people that are honest. And so we have to be honest, right? We attract people that match us, right? If we're honest, we're going to attract honest people. If we're fake, we're going to attract fake people. And it's really important to have if you're dating, for instance, right? And when we, say you meet somebody online, or you meet somebody at a party, or wherever you meet them, and sometimes, we'll put our mask on, we'll be this perfect person, whatever image we think would be the perfect partner that this person would like to be with. And so we pretend to be that person. And you can go on dates, and you can try and see it. And you go through the courtship phase, and you're in your best behavior, and neither person may be their true honest self. And eventually, you get engaged, you get married, and then the masks come down. The real person comes out, which may or may not match this, so you end up finding yourself married to somebody totally different than you thought, right? You married a mask. You didn't marry the authentic person. It might be a very nice person, but it wasn't the one person that you married, right? And so there's this mismatch. And so so the way to have an authentic relationship that lasts is to have both people being willing to be authentic, being willing to be vulnerable, and making it safe for the other person to be vulnerable and imperfect, and love each other as they are, to have that growing edge. When we're trying things for the first time, we don't do them perfectly. So there's this growing edge that we have. And this is the thing about vulnerability. It invites reciprocity. When we're vulnerable, then when we open up, then it invites others to do the same, right? They sense when we're being real, when we're being authentic. And that sounds like a safe place to be themselves, right? To be accepted as they are. Being vulnerable and authentic is really the best gift that we can give to a relationship and to those that we love, right? Going back to the idea of the basket that's over the candle, when you are looking at if you're trying to look at this, let's see, it doesn't work too well, but in the Zoom, but But if you're covering it up and looking through it, you see little glimpses of what's underneath, right? And when you look at those little glimpses, you only get part of the picture of the authentic self there. And so our minds fill in the blanks. So we create this image of what we think is underneath there, but it's distorted because we only have a couple of clues. We don't have the whole thing, right? And so so hiding it, we can entirely cover it up, or even if we just let a little peek, if we just a little bit out, right? Then we only let part of ourselves out, and that also distorts our image in the world. But all of this, being vulnerable, can be difficult. And so it's scary, it's awkward, and it can be just plain icky to be out there. And particularly people that were there. And I think with COVID, I think it made it even worse because it made it so much easier just to stay at home and be safe. And so even if we were used to doing it and being out there, we all kind of regressed back a little bit to being more comfortable staying within, staying in our mask, staying in our comfort zone rather than being out there and making ourselves vulnerable with each other. In the Brene Brown, in her book, Daring Greatly, she says this about vulnerability. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is the path. It's the key to opening up. And so how do we find courage and techniques to drop our masks? Well, there's some great books. We're coming to the end of the hour, and so we can't really cover in more detail here, but I'd like to give you some really good books that you could try. And Brene Brown, she has lots of books, but three that are particularly good are The Gifts of Imperfection, Braving the Wilderness, and Daring Greatness. And the main themes that she has in there, besides the vulnerability, is getting deliberate with your intentions, right? And she does it in a humanistic way rather than a spiritual way. It's really science of mind in a psychologist voice, right? And so she talks about setting authenticity as the number one goal in all situations. And she uses mindfulness to keep that in her intention, right? So she becomes detached from how it's happening and just is present. That's how she does it. And, and then she weaves in a lot of the different psychological practices because she is a PhD in psychology and a licensed LMSW, social worker. So another person is Debbie Ford. And she's, as I said, has done a lot of shadow work, and her best book on that one is The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. There was a book, she died, and they discovered a book that she was working on after, right as she passed away. And it covered, there's the shadow side, but then she was working on how do you reveal your inner light. And that book, which is a beautiful book, it's full of all wonderful prayers and practices. And it's called Your Holiness, Discover the Light Within. She talks about some of the things that she suggests to work on your vulnerability is mirror work with other people in your life. And so how people, ask people that you trust and love, how do they see you? How what you are is what you're doing matching who you are on the inside, or are you putting a mask on that you're putting on for other people? And the people that you trust and love will give you some good feedback on that, right? Another thing is to consider what you say in your body language versus what you say in your words, right? About 83% of what we communicate is through our body language. believe, it's hard to hear what you say because your actions speak so loudly. And then a great exercise is you go through some of the people that you most admire in your life and write down what those qualities are. And similarly, for people that you really don't like in the world and really make you angry or what have you, and write down the negative qualities of those people. And then the exercise then is to say, realize that all of those things are a part of you. You know, when you're pointing at someone with your finger, there's still 3 fingers that are pointing back at yourself, because it's also true with this is why projection, things that what really upset us about something else, someone else, has a lot of there's something going on in us that we're tuned into that channel, right? So that's her big thing there. But the third author that I'd like to recommend is one of my favorites, Ernest Holmes. And there's a lot of things within Science of Mind that really help us to get in touch with our authentic self and come out in a vulnerable way. And it's not just willpower. Like, with Brene Brown, you might think it's just, you have to stiff up her lip and you kind of just have to get out there and do it. Well, in some of the books that Ernest Holmes talks about this, one of them is a beautiful book, This Thing Called You, my favorite. And then there's also the whole Science of Mind test book and the whole teaching of Science of Mind, right? We remember first that we're made in the image and likeness of God, that we are one with God. And so this inner authentic self is awesome because it's God's stuff, right? It is the light of the world that God is shining through us. Another major teaching of Science of Mind is oneness, that we are one with all people. We are part of everything. All people are our peers who are equally important. And when you start with that mindset, then imperfections are part of who we are. We have our strengths and we have our non-strengths, and that's part of who we are. Another key part of Science of Mind is that we are enough. We are enough just as we are. We always think that we're, when people put that mask on, it's because we don't think we're good enough. Well, we are good enough. We are beyond good enough. We are fabulous, each one of us. We each have our gifts, right? And another part of it that really, I think, is what the strength of Science of Mind and the Centers for Spiritual Living is the tool, spiritual practices and tools and principles. And one of them is spiritual mind treatment, right? In prayer. So when we use spiritual mind treatment, we put out that intention of wanting to be whole, wanting to be, of who we are, and speaking our words, setting that intention, and then letting God manifest it for us, right? So if we want a safe place, we know that if we expect to be in a difficult place, we're going to get a difficult place. If we expect to be safe and to be appreciated, then that's what's going to come out. So we have to love ourselves first in order to create a space where other people will love us as well, right? But it's all God, loving God. Right? So there's these practices that we can put to use, and it's not just about empowering. We don't have to just step up and do it with our willpower. It is the divine that is creating this for us, right? So it's a flow rather than forcing it. The classes that we have in the Centers for Spiritual Living are ways to learn about these spiritual principles and practices. And so we've got a class coming up called Journey of the Soul. And it's a way to apply the spiritual principles and practices to affirm and experience our inner divinity, the wholeness of who we are, and express it in the world. That's the soul's journey, is discover that, right? And that class is going to be starting on Tuesday, March 28th, I think it is. Yes. And so that will be a great class. It's a wonderful class for both people that are new to science of mind or that have been in it a long time. And the curriculum was written by Patrick Herbula, who is going to be our guest speaker on March 26th. So you'll get to see him, and you'll know when you hear him. He's a fabulous speaker. He's been in New Thought and for 35 years or more, and taught all kinds of workshops and mindfulness and different practices, energy work, and so he's quite a person. So I'm really grateful he's going to be here with us. So let's just take all of this to prayer. And so we know that God is, that there was one life, that life is God, and that life is my life and my cat's life and everyone here. And that it flows in us and through us and as us, as joy, as peace, as wonder, as love, as wholeness. It is that true self that is within us, each one of us. It is that authentic self. And as we let go of our fear and our anxiety, our need to be perfect or whatever that we are afraid of, we are in touch with that wonderful part of us, the true self, the authentic self within us. And we are grateful for it. And as we share that gratitude, it grows, it has a chance to express itself in the world, and life becomes an expression of joy and exploration, of creating something even greater than we have known before, and knowing that we are co-creating with God. The intention, the divine intention for us in the world. And there is this wonderful synergy as our authentic self interacts with the authentic self of people in our community, in our family, and around the world. It is all God and it is all good. We are thankful for this time to be together to learn about this. We are thankful that as we let go and let God, God says, yes, my beloved, yes. And together we say, and so it is.